Do you love the vibe of small towns in the mountains where it almost seems like something supernatural and spooky is going on, but it's mostly just cozy and familiar? Well, then you might love this game that we are talking about today on the RPG Goblin, as I bring on Emily and we talk about a game called Over the Mountain, which is a solo TTRPG journaling game. You move to this small mountain town and you don't know anyone or you don't really know anything. And over the course of playing the game, you make journal entries where you meet NPCs and events happen and you go to new places and you slowly build this little community and town that was once nothing, but is now your own complete story with your character being the center of it. Over the Mountain is such an adorable game, and actually at the time of recording this intro, I've actually started my first day within this game, and it's been so fun setting up these world elements to tell my character's story through. So I really hope that you consider getting this game by the end of this episode, but yeah, let's get into it. All right, so welcome to today's episode of the RPG Goblin. I am your host, Willow, and we are going to be talking about a little solo RPG by the name of Over the Mountain. Now, before we get into introducing that and talking about that, first we have to introduce our guest. Emily, would you like to please introduce yourself very quick?
Hi, I'm Emily. I've been here before. A couple times. I don't know if you release these in the order that you record them, so that'll be fun if they.
I do. So you've been on here 2 times already.
Okay, good.
You never know.
Right.
Someone new always listens to a different episode.
Yeah. Well, if this is your first time hearing one of our episodes that we've done together, I feel like you should go listen to the other 2 for continuity's sake. And also because we talked about some really fun and cool stuff. Yeah, I'm Emily. I am also known as Paradise Maid. I'm a dice maker and a digital artist. I primarily post on Instagram when I'm not taking a necessary health break, like I am right now. I have been offline for months at this point, so I don't know if anybody will even remember me. The the eldritch creature from beyond that I've become, living in my little social media-less cave. Yeah, but I'm around somewhere, and I will be back. So
look forward to it.
I feel like my intro just gets increasingly less like understandable each time I'm here.
I'm now an eldritch being.
Yeah, I'm just gonna get weirder every time.
We love it. We absolutely love it.
Thank you.
Yeah, so we were talking, and I believe even in the last episode that you were on, you mentioned a solo game that you recently got called Over the Mountain. And so when we were talking a few weeks ago, we decided, why not record an episode about that? That seems really cool. Solo RPGs are really awesome. We actually have technically recorded a solo RPG before this. However, this one is different, as it's actually a solo RPG that is also a journaling game, which quite a lot of them are. And I find it very fascinating. And if you would like to give a introduction of what Over the Mountain is about, please go ahead.
Yeah, absolutely. So its subtitle is a solo rural fantasy journaling RPG. It's by March Crow Games, whose name I believe is Mars Corbeau, at least according to the PDF. I found it on itch.io. What was that?
Yes, I do believe that is their name.
Okay, perfect. I found it on itch.io. I was actually looking for solo journaling games after a campaign that I was in for a while ended in just one of the most abysmal ways. And
oh, no.
I know, it was a whole mess, but unfortunately, I'm not on good terms with the DM anymore. And so after that ended, our entire group invested a lot of time and creative energy into our characters, and we wrote a ton, and we actually hadn't played very many sessions, but we wrote hundreds of thousands of words as a group, and that was all lost when the game fell
Oh,
apart. Yeah.
that's
And
so
so
sad.
that hurts, right? Like all of that time, energy, everything that we had written together was gone, primarily because none of us had thought to back it up, because you don't expect that to just get disappeared out from, cyberspace. But unfortunately, it
Oh,
does
I've had that
happen.
happen before where the DM like deleted a Discord server or something that had everything on it.
Yeah, it's exactly that. So there's my word of warning. A side note for you: if you're writing something and you are not the custodian of where it's kept, maybe just occasionally make a copy. I'm just saying.
Yeah.
So yeah, so a part of that was I made this character. Her name was Jessrin, and she was married, and she and her wife, their story was very near and dear to me, and it hurt a lot for a lot of reasons when that game ended the way that it did. But one of the
hmm
things that really nagged at me was the fact that I didn't get to give them a good story. I didn't get to give them a good ending. And honestly, a lot of their backstory was stuff that I wasn't happy with.
hmm
Um, and so I decided that I wanted to explore ways that I could rewrite their backstory together, and keeping sort of the general main plot points of it the same, the things that I wanted to keep the same for
hmm
continuity, and change the things that I didn't like about it, um, and then move that forward and give them the ending that they deserved, and also give myself closure for a game that ended very abruptly and unfortunately. So
Oh, so sad. Oh,
yeah,
I'm
it
so
was
sorry.
rough. It's okay. It happens. It's one of those things where it's like, um, it took a while to it feels so weird, because I'm one of those people where I'm like, one half of me is like, it's a game, it's not that deep, but the other half of me is like, I poured a lot of hours and a lot of creative energy and a lot of emotion into all of this. And that's the really intimate thing about TTRPGs that I think a lot of people don't understand, where when you're playing a video game, you can, to a degree, make your own character or make the characters your own, but you don't
hmm
have a hand in literally every facet of who they are, and you don't embody them in a way that you do when you're playing a TTRPG. So it was a struggle for a little bit to kind of figure out how I wanted to move forward, if I wanted to move forward, and that was just sort of a sore spot for me. And I got to a point, I think last summer, where I decided, okay, I'm in a place now where it doesn't hurt to think about how, like, the friendships around this game, well, one friendship around that game had ended, and how that had sort of fallen apart, and everything that came to pass after that didn't hurt anymore, but it was still nagging at me that I didn't have a solution for Jessrin and Keyleth, her name was at the time. She was rolled on a random NPC name table. Don't, it's not a
Nothing's
Critical
wrong
Role
with that.
reference. I've like, at the time, I had never listened to Critical Role. If I can be 100% honest with you, I tried really hard to listen to campaign one, and I, for a lot of reasons, really struggled to get through it. I have watched the TV show and really enjoy it, though. It's much more digestible in that format. But that's an
Yeah,
aside.
definitely 4 hour sessions versus like 30-minute episodes. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
No,
And
I definitely get it. I haven't digested any like Critical Role um media much myself, because it has a very certain entry point, and it's being able
Mhm.
to sit through those long sessions and really, I mean, I've heard very good things about how everyone plays and everything, but like really liking the play styles and loving the characters and all of that, and you get that emotional attachment, but definitely
Right.
has a pretty high bar of entry.
Yeah, exactly. If you ever want sort of a stepping stone, I highly recommend Exandria Unlimited Calamity. It's DM'd by Brennan
I've
Lee
heard
Mulligan, who
so
is
many good things about
one of my favorites.
it.
Yeah, it's incredible. It's the way they play it out is just gorgeous. I'm not gonna go on about that because that's not what we're here to talk about today. But if I can recommend it, that's the only Critical Role thing I have consumed in its entirety, and I've watched it I think 3 times at this point. I love it so much. It's just like it's become a comfort thing for me, even though it is terrifying in a lot of respects. There's so much happening, but I love it. Anyway, all of that aside,
Okay, yep.
yeah, I will get to the point somehow, someday. Um, but I actually put out an ask sticker on one of my Instagram stories because this was a time when I was actually active on Instagram and people would like correspond with me. Um, and I just put out a question sticker that said, "Hey, this game ended um, really poorly several months ago, and I want to do something with these characters. What have you guys done when you've experienced this, if you have, or what else would you recommend?"
Hmm.
Because I think everybody's gone through the thing of like a game you love ending, right? For various reasons. And whether it is or isn't satisfying kind of depends on the nature of the ending and what you want for the character. So a lot of the time, people will put out a very important character concept that they've spent time developing and that they are really invested in, and then maybe they only get to play a session or two of that character, or maybe the game never gets off the ground to begin with, or maybe like
Hmm.
me it ends very abruptly. All of those things sort of came out in the answers that I got in that question box, and one of my favorite suggestions was to engage with solo journaling RPGs as a way to sort of take narrative control, but also have an element of a framework that I could work in and not have to write it from scratch,
Hmm.
right? Because that is hard too, is to just come up with something completely on your own. The
Yeah.
collaborative beauty of D&D is that you get to work together and you don't have to produce all of that
And
yourself.
there's definitely a different magic between, writing your own story versus there being elements of uncertainty and other things coming in that you don't control. They're
Yeah.
very different experiences.
Yeah, things that can surprise you that you wouldn't have thought of yourself. And that's one of the things that I'm most excited to talk about with this game, is that it's gone in directions that I wouldn't expect, honestly.
Oh,
I'm
I'm so
really excited to
excited.
tell you about them. So, Over the Mountain is one that I found while I was sort of scouring the internet looking for the right solo journal RPG to play to finish Jestrin and Keyleth's story. Um, Whether rewrite it entirely or carry it out, I hadn't decided. I still haven't, honestly. I haven't
Hmm.
picked one yet that feels right for them. But while I was looking, I found Over the Mountain, and it's free on itch.io. I think you might be able to donate to March Crow's tip jar, if I'm recalling correctly. I've looked at so many that they
Yes.
all kind of okay, good. So I highly recommend, because this is so much fun and it's really beautiful in its simplicity, and I feel that it kind of walks the line of giving you just enough guidance without restricting you,
Hmm.
which is one of my favorite things in an RPG.
Good balance, a good balance of guidance and enough like that is the good thing about solo RPGs, that at least that I've found, is that quite a good amount of them have enough structure there to make you feel good going in. And
Mhm.
then once you're in and you get used to using it, you can get more creative and lose some of the structure a little bit as you just decide you want to go a slightly different way. You can even introduce your own mechanics into the game itself, but you playing that first solo RPG and it giving you the structure that you need gives it such it makes it so easy to actually start the game and get into it and feel comfortable.
Absolutely. And one of the things that I I'm excited to tell you about is how I've sort of adjusted some of the mechanics
Ooh.
myself to just to fuck around a little bit. I don't know. I like to sort of change and adjust things. And I can be very wordy when I write. I find it fun to sort of let my writing follow whatever path it wants to take. I don't really stick to a sort of like formula or anything. Like if I feel inspired to write a really long journal entry for one of these, I'll do it. So
Hmm.
it's actually taking me a while, because as I mentioned, I've had some health stuff, and so it's been really nice too to be able to just work on this when I have a little bit of energy, or when I'm having a good day, put it down and come back to it later when I'm feeling inspired and I want to write or I want to create or do something, but I maybe don't have the energy that it would take me to make dice or to draw something or to write something new. I can return back to this game and know that I've already started a really long journal entry talking about one of my days, or I can roll a new day and then have a framework to work with. And it kind of takes some of the mental stress away from writing a story, but it still has enough opening to like let you finagle the story yourself. Like how you make all of these roles function into something cohesive, I think is the really fun and creatively challenging part, but it's
Hmm.
in a cool way. It's like doing
Since that's
a
completely up
puzzle.
to you.
Yeah, exactly. Like to kind of cover the general premise of the game, I think it's best exemplified in the character creation section, which is the very first section on the if you read left to right, um, the top left of the first page of the little PDF. Um, it asks questions about you, your character. Uh, so obviously, I've only played this game through one time, and I am 6 days in. So, like I said, I write a lot. I'm really slow at it, but I'm trying not to rush.
Yeah,
Also,
go
I'm
at it
trying
your
to
own
just
pace.
yeah enjoy the process too, which is easier when you're doing something like this that is guided but self-paced.
Yeah, and it's actually solo RPGs are also a fantastic option if you have a really busy schedule and you enjoy TTRPGs, but like your life doesn't have the room
Hmm.
to like fit in those sessions. Solo games are fantastic because you could play for 10 minutes and be done for the day.
Yeah.
You can play once a month. You can do it. You can control however much time you spend on this game, and you don't have to worry about it working with other people in your schedule, working with other people and all of that. So if you have a busy life, you should really look into solo RPGs.
Yeah, I actually take mine to work with me every once in a while when I know, like, if the weather's going to be bad. I've been doing it a lot recently, um, because Midwestern winter, I don't want to go outside.
I
um,
have no idea what you could be talking about.
uh-huh, it's a mystery. Well, yeah, you don't know now. You're free of it. Um, but yeah, so it's miserable here sometimes in the winter, and I have an hour for lunch in my day, and sometimes it's a little too hectic and I'm tired and I just want to chill. I don't want to do anything that requires brain power, but other times I feel creative and I want to do something, especially sometimes to take my attention away from a screen, because
Hmm.
I work in systems at a university. So that's a lot of my day is spent staring at my computer, manipulating reports and building reports and things like that. And so having a little while to just look away and something to do that also keeps me away from just staring at my phone, which is another smaller screen. Uh, and also to give myself a reprieve, right? This is just time with me and the dice and the game. And
And to have fun.
yeah, exactly. It's a nice sort of oasis in the middle of the day when I take this to work on during my lunchtime. And also it just looks like I'm writing in a journal. Maybe rolling
They
dice
would
if I
never
take
know.
physical dice. Yeah. Yeah. Unless they come and see my dumb little map that I drew. Uh
But it would be so cute.
It's dorky. I haven't filled it out yet. But anyway, so yeah, if you don't have a lot of time, or if you struggle to sort of work games into your day, or even if you just want something to do that takes you out of your real life for a little while, that you can do in maybe 15 or 20-minute increments sometimes, highly recommend. So this game specifically, I mentioned the character creation because I think all of the questions that are asked are very representative of the themes of the game overall and sort of what you're trying to accomplish in the game.
Absolutely.
So the first one, do you want to hear my character's answers?
Yeah, if you want to say the question and then give your answer to it, absolutely.
Yeah, for sure. So the first one, why are you in the mountains? My character's in the mountains because her uncle passed away and bequeathed to her his cabin. And
very Stardew Valley.
yes, exactly. And all of the land that it's on, which is actually protected. So I made up a fictional town, and it's called Valerian Creek. It is in Tennessee. It's in the Appalachian Mountains. Yeah. And I've driven through that area, and I think it is absolutely gorgeous. It's also a place where I can imagine just the weirdest shit happening. So I really love Twin Peaks, and the X-Files. I watched the X-Files growing up. My mom would be mortified to hear me admit that to anybody, because she I think she was worried about it. But yeah, when I was a kid, I turned out okay. I'm a weird adult, but who isn't? So I grew up watching the X-Files, and then when I was in college, I watched the entirety of Twin Peaks for the first time, and that's just like that sort of brand of slightly unsettling, like everybody's weird, everybody's got secrets, everybody's got something going on. That kind of media is really inspiring to me, and I think we've talked about that a little bit when we were talking about Monster of the Week.
Yes.
Yeah, so that kind of the same feeling is what I want to evoke in my Over the Mountain game for myself that I do for my players when we do Monster of the Week. And the setting is different, right? My Monster of the Week setting is in rural Indiana, and my Over the Mountain setting is in the mountains of Tennessee, but generally still the same. So her uncle passed away and left her his cabin and all of the land that it's on, and it's actually a protected area of forest that he was the custodian of. So she has inherited that from him.
I love that. I love that so much.
Yeah. And then it says, what is your talent, with a capital T? And it does give examples here too. If you have a hard time sort of conjuring up anything, or if you like having examples. So some talent examples are medium, healer, oracle, ... It could be anything. My character is capable of psychometry, which is the sort of the brand of extrasensory perception where when you touch an object, you can read things that have happened to it or been done with it.
That's really fun. That's
I've
really,
always
really cool.
I've always found that fascinating. And
Yeah, I've
so,
watched some shows that have like that in it before,
yeah.
and it's always such an interesting part, especially when they touch on it and they actually like go through like what they feel and what they see a little bit and all of that. Always one of the most interesting parts. So that's insanely cool.
Right? I thought so too. And I thought it would be interesting to kind of integrate that into this setting. And of course, every character in Over the Mountain has to have a secret.
Of course.
So when it asks, what is your secret? My character's secret is actually based on something that one of my former bosses said to me. So
Interesting.
yeah, it's like I feel like I'm just meandering all over the place here, but it's wacky. I don't know. This game, the way I have played it is entirely for me. So I've just incorporated a bunch of shit that I think is cool, uh,
Mhm.
which is like the whole point, and something you're free to do in a solo game because nobody's going to
It's
tell
your
you no.
game.
Yeah, nobody else.
You get to
There are no
control everything.
God, this is boring. I don't want to listen to the interaction with this NPC. I don't want to shop for magic items. I don't care, right? Like, so I could just whatever, and so the secret that my character has um relates to something that a librarian I worked for when I was in college told me, is that she has this theory. She believes in reincarnation, and she has a
Mhm.
theory that some people, when they are reincarnated into another person, their soul isn't always wiped completely clean of memory.
Interesting.
Yeah, and so that's sort of her explanation for children that you meet who are like tiny adults, right? Weirdly mature,
Mhm.
um, that like start talking early. And I was one of those kids, and I've also always had a really like inexplicable attachment to the French language. I was for a while a French teacher.
Mhm.
And French was one of the things that I studied when I was in college, and I worked for her doing some French language translation of historical documents from the 18th and 19th century. And
That's really cool, by the way. Just
it was so much fun. I loved that job. So yeah, there's my ad for you to pursue another language. Um,
And
it's
so how did that tie in with The Secret?
so my character and her uncle are people who, when they are reincarnated, whatever process it is that we go through to have our souls wiped of our memories, it doesn't last for them.
Ooh.
And so they're capable of sort of, as they grow up and get older, as they mature, they start remembering things from their past lives. And so they have hundreds of years of history sort of accessible in their memory. And of course, they are still technically mortal, right? Because they're
Mhm.
they're still living a life in a mortal body.
Can still
But
die.
yeah, they still will die eventually, obviously, as seen by her uncle. Um, and they're also not actually related.
Mm.
They found each other um, because they were hired by the government to guard. I know this is my X-Files. This is the X-Files element of this. They were hired by the government to basically guard and clear areas where the world gets a little thin and other things start
Oh.
coming through.
Oh gosh, this is so cool. This is
Thank
so
you.
cool. You
Thank
did
you.
you did such a like already I'm invested. I know there's one more question left, though I'm very curious before we get to that.
Yeah.
How much did you kind of go at each answer at a time and make a character like that, or did you consider all of the questions and all of the answers at the same time and build up a story and a character around everything at the same time?
I like personally my approach to building characters in any system is always more holistic. Like I
Hmm.
come up with the concept of the character and the most prevalent things about them. So like to put it in D&D terms, before I pick their like race or their background, typically I start with the class that I want to play. And
Hmm.
then I look at sort of what archetypes I find interesting within that class, and I expand from there. I make them more complicated. I add layers. I pick their race based not on the mechanical benefits usually, but based on what I think would be interesting
Hmm.
to like mesh with that character. And then I'll pick their background to sort of unite like the story of how a Goliath became a Tempest cleric, right? That's my first and longest running D&D character.
I love
And
that.
yeah, thank you. So for this one, I kind of stewed on it for a while. Um, I came up with the answer why I was in the mountains first. So in that respect, like that was just the thing that sort of came to mind first, right? Like my character's uncle had died and I was taking over. And I knew from reading the game ahead of time, like looking at the PDF, I know there are spirits involved. Some of the neighbors in the game are spirits. It's kind of a spoiler for the rest of the episode, but and there are dungeons and things where you encounter minor and major threats. And so, being a medium is naturally a very enticing option, but I kind of like the idea that the spirits choose who they want to see them.
Mm-hmm.
Right. I find that very appealing, just as a sort of trope in occult fiction, right? Where it's like there are some people who are born with the ability to see them or whatever. Like that's fine. But I just generally prefer when it is up to the spirit, when they can be seen by whom, etc. And I like giving them that agency. And I also think it makes for some very interesting interactions because it really tells you who they choose to trust.
And even what kind of people they are, because if they go right away with you being able to see them, they might not care as much, or very outgoing and just want to like meet new people and things like that.
Yeah.
Ooh, that is very cool.
Yeah. And so
Um,
I kind of oh, go ahead.
oh, I was just gonna after you say whatever you're gonna say, the last question, I'm very very curious about your answer with.
Yeah. So um to kind of like actually answer your previous question in a focused fashion, I considered sort of the how I wanted to interact with the game.
Hmm.
And so I knew like the reason I was there was because I was bequeathed this land and this cabin. Um and I just kind of decided that my character was going to be a bit of a loner, that she's on her own. She's the only person her uncle had, so she came here to take care of things. And then looking at this, I knew I didn't really want her to be a medium, but I wanted her to be somebody that these spirits would, at some point and for whatever reason, feel like appearing to and
Hmm.
speaking with. And so then I kind of worked backwards. I think I landed on the secret next, um, of her sort of having the lasting memory and being recruited to do these things. And of course, like, there's of course the option for her and or her uncle to never alert the government that they've come back, right? Because they
Hmm.
can remember that they've been hired, that they've done work for this particular sector of the government before, but they those two in particular feel called to do so. That's their
Hmm.
calling, is
Mm.
to protect. Yeah, because they
Which is the last question on the
exactly.
board.
Uh-huh. So not to not to necessarily hunt monsters, but to protect people and to protect spirits. Because I saw that actually as one of the suggested options under what is your calling: earn respect,
Hmm.
save spirits, dot dot dot, right? Some examples, and I thought that was very interesting. The idea that people in general tend to attribute a lot of malevolent things to spirits,
Very true.
right? Like poltergeist, etc. The various like haunting movies and whatnot, which are like fun to watch and stuff, like scary ghosts, hell yeah. But I like the idea that the spirits aren't inherently malevolent, that most of them probably are just vibing.
Yeah, honestly, it just makes me think of a show. There's an American version as well, but we've watched the British show called Ghosts, and
Uh,
it's basically just ghosts throughout the centuries who have like died in this house. They stay there. They're now ghosts,
yeah,
and they're just like normal people, and they're learning about things around them, and it's honestly such a good show because it's so interesting to see spirits interact in a kind of wholesome and as if they're people. Like they're not just a scary thing. They are people. They are the spirits of these people who have died, and they get to still experience the world.
yeah, exactly. And that's kind of what I like. I For this game specifically, I actually have ended up developing spirits to be like almost less human in a sense, but not in a malevolent way, right? They're kind of like they are the strongest remnants of whoever or whatever they were when they were alive.
Hmm.
So, kind of to tie it back into the idea that reincarnation is the sort of rule of this world instead of an afterlife. I like the idea of the spirits being the manifestation of what is left behind when the spirit passes, like when the soul passes, and whatever they experienced in life is
Ooh.
sort of washed away. I think sometimes, at least in the way I play this game, that's what makes these spirits is that sort of collective energy from those experiences and maybe the strength of that person's particular convictions regarding something, that gets wiped away when they get reincarnated and they start as a blank slate. But all that
That's
time, all that
so
energy.
cool.
Thank you.
Like seriously, like hearing all of this, there's a character that now I want to like insert into this game and like make up like lore on how it would work and everything. So like I'm already like thinking in my mind like, oh man, it would be
Yeah.
really cool to play this.
This is just
But
like my creative spiraling. This is like none of that. A lot of that is not in Over the Mountain. I'm going to put that caveat out there. That's just me making shit up.
but it
um,
shows how flexible, even though this is like a two page PDF, there a lot of what's here is mostly just like tables to roll on.
mhm.
You can do whatever you want. You can make up whatever story, whatever lore, what the world is like. You can make that all up. It is all dependent on you and what you think is fun. And that's the cool thing with solo games is that you can change the way you play it to fit your style and your likes. So, like Emily, if you really like kind of that supernatural, like secret element and all of that, insert it in your game. Have fun with it. Run with it. See what interesting things can happen. This game works very well with like Emily's aesthetic in those games.
uh,
Um, but you could even do that with other solo RPGs or even other tabletop role playing games in general and see what happens. So I just find this all super super inspiring to listen to.
Yay. I hope you're not the only one because it's genuinely so much fun to play. And I would love to hear about other people sort of joining in and making their own towns over the mountain. Maybe we can
Yes.
all live in neighboring towns and talk shit. There is a an achievement. There are some achievements that March Crow has incorporated into the game sort of at the end of the last page. And you can it's just based on your positive interactions, right? I'm
Hmm.
hoping that you're down to talk mechanics here in a minute, but
Oh,
um,
absolutely.
yeah, so there are like interaction based achievements and things like that, and there's absolutely one. I'm trying to find where it is on here. Oh,
Oh.
the rival narrator. So narrative achievements, right? These are things that are totally up to you to come up with, right? But one of
Mhm.
the narrative achievements is rival shit talk another town. So if anybody makes a town in Over the Mountain, I need you to tell me the town and what it's like so I can shit talk it. I wanna
Please.
I wanna link our worlds together. Um,
Let me talk shit.
yes. I just think it would be funny too to kind of have them have a little reference to somebody else's game of this in my own. Um, but if you're down, I actually am ready to start day 6. Um,
Ooh, yes.
I can, if you would like, I can give you sort of a brief overview of my previous 5 days, and then we can do day 6 together if you feel like it.
Yeah, I think that would be a great intro into actually like playing the game in the process of starting it. So absolutely.
Yay! All right, I'm gonna give the disclaimer that I do play this in a physical journal, so there will be the sounds of me turning pages and things like that, manipulating the paper in my journal and whatnot. So if that upsets you, if you don't like that sound, this is my disclaimer right now that I'm about to be rustling around a whole bunch. So, I do you want to hear about like how I laid my journal out?
Yeah, sure. Because I know there are suggestions within the PDF itself on
Mhm.
kind of different spreads you want to do with like locations and NPCs. So
Yeah.
absolutely.
Yeah. So I drew a little mountain. There is
Cute.
and I actually did it by elevation as opposed to like north and south, like whatever, because it's
Ooh.
up the mountain, right? So,
Mhm.
um, the like high up on the mountain is a lake that feeds down into a river which splits triangles here with the lake up at the top. My house is, I decided, near a river, near one of the rivers, the like local westernmost branch of that river, sort of right where it splits. Um, and because of how I decided this land is going to be, I know that I live in a cabin that is surrounded largely by woods. So
Mhm.
I figured that I live probably in a very unpopulated region, and most of the town of Valerian Creek itself is sort of on the eastern triangle and the southern triangle. So,
Mhm.
yeah, I don't think it matters ultimately that much, but I did doodle a little map. Um,
Yeah, world building.
yeah,
Absolutely.
and then I have my list of locations. So the way I laid this out is I just took the list of locations that you roll on for the game and I put them in order with room for me to name them if it's the kind of place that would get a name. So, like the first one, the gas station, I made room to name it, write 3 adjectives about it, and also track my encounters that I have there. So, I'll get into that in a second, but it's actually only 2 lines because I came up with a symbology system. Because I like, you have encounters at any place you go, and you roll a d6 to determine how well the encounter goes. A 1 being very poorly, a 3 being like mid, like decently. I guess 3 or 4 being like mid or decent, and then a 6 being like great. You had a great time there. Um, and
Is
so
fantastic.
yeah, and then there are different achievements you get based on the quality of your interactions, right? So for a certain, excuse me, a certain number of positive interactions, which is a 3 or higher, um, you get to mark that and use that sort of as experience tracking almost. Uh,
Yeah, it's almost like it's almost user's experience in that way. If you want to kind of compare it to other games that are
yeah,
a bit more crunchy.
yeah, exactly. I said 3 or higher. Typically, I rule it 4, 5, or 6 is a positive encounter. 1, 2, or 3 is not a positive encounter, right? And, like,
Mhm.
just however it goes.
Oh yeah,
I
it's
don't.
actually completely up to you. You just roll a d6 and it's 1 is poorly, 6 is perfect. So there's a lot
Mhm.
of room for interpreting your answers depending on the situation, which I really like.
Yeah, exactly. So some of them are just middle of the road, right? Like nothing special, whatever. But others, you have a great time. Some you have a fucking awful time. I don't track negative encounters. I write about them in my journal, but on my little locations page, I don't bother tracking them because there's no metric for negative interaction, right?
Mhm.
Like the game, you gain experience or you get achievements you get to get further by having positive interactions, but it doesn't punish you for having a bad day, which I think is
So it's
pretty neat.
so it's mostly just like if you want to keep track of it, you can, but it doesn't. kick you in the ass or anything if you.
Exactly. Yeah, and I don't bother tracking them numerically because I don't need to count them for anything, but I have a system
Yeah.
where I'll put a dot for a 4 or a 5 if I roll a 4 or 5 on my d6, and then if I roll a 6, I consider that like I had a great time at this place. And I'll put a little asterisk on it. So that's sort of
Oh, that's
my
adorable.
system. Yeah, it works out. So like the first location is the gas station, and I actually rolled this on my first day. It's one of the first places that I went, which makes sense because if I mean anybody from a small town knows that the gas station is like pivotal. Um, so I honestly I have a really hard time naming things. My character doesn't have a name. I'm gonna be real with you. I write everything in first person. She doesn't need a name right now. I'll get to it eventually.
It'll be like it'll be a build up and suspense to like the revealing of the name much later
yeah,
in the journal.
maybe there isn't one. I don't know. I
Exactly.
feel like I want to draw. I want to draw her, and I want to draw like her and her potential like love interests and things like that. And like her uncle and things like. I just think it would be cute, and so I'm like, I know eventually I'll have to name her before I share any of my drawings of her or whatever. But I
It's
mean,
just
maybe
fun
I
to
just
think about.
yeah,
I mean,
exactly.
she could
Um,
always just be some sort of nameless legend. You don't know.
yeah, maybe I'll just name her Legend.
Yeah.
Right on. That's it. That's her name. Her name is Legend, and
Legend.
she doesn't like to talk about it because it's embarrassing. um, her
Her
parents had
parents
very
were
high
kind of weird.
aspirations.
Yeah.
Yeah, her parents had really high aspirations for her, and now she lives in the woods, talking to ghosts and
They
getting
might be
paid
a
a
little
pittance by the
disappointed, but it's
government.
fine.
Yeah. Perfect.
We
Um,
love this.
yeah, so I honestly like a lot of my names and stuff. I will either pick the a super nondescript name because again, if you've been to a small town, you know sometimes it's just labeled, right? Like there'll be a sign that says market and you know
Gas.
it yeah, gas, right? So I was doing like a random uh I think I did a randomly generated gas station name and it was just called Quickie, which is funny to me personally
That's
because
so
I'm
good.
lewd, right? So I'm like, ah, nice. And then you generate randomly, or you can choose, right? I think it's more fun to randomly generate it because I think like my character has shown up here, she's blown in, she's brought by necessity.
Mhm.
I think I forgot to mention it, but something I decided, like with how her and her uncle's relationship sort of functions, is that they're on a bit of an offset in terms of their like reincarnation cycles. So I don't think they know at this point who is older, really, like who has been reincarnated more times or who was first. Um,
Freaky.
yeah, right? Wild. Like you lose track, I would think. But at this point, he is like 40 years ahead of her, technically.
Hmm.
So he was 68 when he passed away very suddenly. Um, and I haven't figured out yet how that happened or why. I don't know if she knows, honestly.
That'll come
Uh,
later.
yeah,
That's
exactly. I
again the
kind of
beauty.
like, yeah, I
You
like
don't have
leaving
to
it
figure it all out.
unwritten. Exactly. I like leaving openings for the story to surprise me. Um, so she is 28 as I am like writing this. That's how old I am. So I was like, I can identify. I get it. I also want to run away into the woods and just get paid enough to live in the forest, I guess. So yeah, so that is sort of how they function. And eventually her uncle, air quotes, will be reincarnated. He will start to remember and he will come find her. And at that point, she will be older and she'll be able to help him remember as necessary, get him settled, things like that. And then probably they'll part ways so they can, like, while they're young, they try to give each other time to like live a life and that sort of
That's
thing.
fun.
Yeah. I just think that's conceptually neat. So I don't know how I got there, but
Yeah, so the first few days before the sixth day, so that we can see what that's going to be about.
Oh, I remember now. I decided that randomly generating the adjectives and everything would be the best because like she didn't choose to come here. She didn't get to like pick what the place is going to be like. And also I feel like I get more variety. So like the quickie gas station is colorful, overstuffed, and void, which I decided means like they have a ton of shit in there, like so much stuff that you could buy, but no people ever.
Yeah, oh, that's so good. And I think, honestly, if you are playing solo games, random generators are your friend. They are your best friend because you can just come up with so many interesting things just by hitting that button a few times.
100%. So next I had my neighbors. So I just honestly laid out my journal in the order that everything is covered in the PDF. So first locations, then neighbors. And I have not filled in all of these yet. I just make a neighbor as I encounter them. So we might make a new neighbor today. We'll see what we roll.
Yeah, when I was reading through this, that's kind of how I understood the game, where the locations and the neighbors and all of that are being built and named and like all of that as you are going. It's not pre-built before you start the story, which I think gives you a lot of flexibility because you can, you know, create different people, especially if you are spacing out when you're doing this journal more. You're going to be a slightly different person. So you're going to create fun people in that timeline, and it doesn't restrict yourself to just these set amount of people that you created at one time.
Exactly.
Excuse me.
Yeah. So I have a handful of my neighbors filled in. 4 spirit or spirit adjacent neighbors and 7 human neighbors.
Very fun.
Yeah. So I get a randomly generated name after I roll a d6 to determine their pronouns. So 1 is he, him, 2 is he, they, 3 is they, them, 4, I know how to do numbers. Yeah, 4 is she, they, 5 is she, her, and 6 I choose based on what I feel is right by their description. Yeah, so then I choose a name according to either their personality or if I don't feel any particular kind of way about their personality. I'll just pick what kind of seems right or a neat name because I randomly generate like huge lists of names and then I sort of scroll through and I'm like, oh, that's neat. That's a cool one.
And they also get adjectives. I can talk. Yes,
I got you.
Yeah. They also get those as well to describe like aspects of them.
Yes. So I also let that kind of dictate how my character feels about them, sort of their first impression. So I mentioned earlier love interest because I love playing dating sims and I think romance in games is really cute. All of my D&D characters have partners or will because like all of my DMs know that I just think like a tiny little bit of a romantic subplot is just like the sprinkles on top. And so naturally when I was setting up this game I was like, okay, how am I going to figure out like who, if any of these people my character might be into? Yeah, how do I date these people? How do I turn this into a dating sim? Like I try to everything else. And my sappiness has led me to decide just like when you go to a location, when you meet a person or anytime you encounter a person, you roll a d6 and see how your encounter with them goes. So I decided that whatever number of 6s that I roll, so exceptionally good encounters with them, that's like successfully flirting with them. As long as they're somebody that I feel like my character would be attracted to based on their adjectives, right? So like
If
Currently,
you would like to give a example.
yeah, I was literally about to. So currently, uh, I've only been here for 5 days, but I have twice in a row met a neighbor named Socorro Blankenship. Um,
Whoa,
I
that's
know this
a
random
name.
name generator that I use goes fucking hard. It's so good. Socorro's pronouns are she, they. She's 33. So to reverse engineer this a little bit, the way it works in the game is you roll to determine sort of what facets you're going to encounter at a given point in the day. So
Mhm.
on this day, I think it was actually day 4. I oh no, it was day 3. My night event, I rolled to go to the dive bar, um,
As you
which
do.
is called Foxfire Tav. Yeah, as one does, whatever. And my event, I rolled for a location, a neighbor, and an event to happen. So my location was the dive bar. The neighbor that I rolled was an 8, a human who is really strong. And then the event that I
Oh
rolled,
wow.
yeah, yeah, she's buff as hell. So then the event that I rolled was a plant is blooming. And so, like, okay,
Interesting.
yeah. And so I
Yeah.
kind of sat with that for a second. I'm like, I can encounter anybody at a dive bar. Um, what kind of very strong person is going to give a shit about a plant blooming? So I decided that Socorro Blankenship is let me look at her page again. A groundskeeper slash gardener slash lumberjack. Because
I love that so much.
right. Because I was like, all right, so obviously if she's working outside, it makes sense that she would have a lot of functional strength, that she would be very strong and also care about a plant blooming in a bar.
Yeah.
So
See, this is what I love about these solo games that just give you prompts where it's
yeah,
just like, all right, here's all these things. You either come up with parts of them or you roll randomly on tables. Here's all these things, make them work together. And it can just
right.
produce the most insane things. Like who doesn't want a buff gardener landskeeper
Landscaper, right.
and
Who wouldn't? So I actually hadn't decided. So the way it works, the way I play the game at least, is I was just kind of gonna let it happen. So I honestly didn't expect to have any sort of strong encounters with anybody this early on in the game. Like
Mhm.
I was ready for it to just take a while to develop a romance with any neighbor. So when I rolled to see which neighbor I got, I then rolled all the things that I talked about for their pronouns, their name, I roll their age, and I came up with her occupation, and then, like I said, I let the adjectives sort of determine how my character feels about this person.
Mhm.
So I might roll all of these things that, like, I as a player might find attractive, but then if I get a bunch of shitty adjectives, I'm like, oh, I did not have a good first impression of this person. Like they really rubbed me the wrong way. Um, or like just objectively speaking, I don't like them maybe, or I notice these things about them that I think my character would find repulsive in whatever respect.
Mhm.
However, for Socorro Blankenship, the first 3 adjectives I got were mighty. Of course, she's very strong. Um, beneficial, which I kind of interpreted to mean like um, she's a good neighbor, right? That she's open to sort of talk and share about this new place that my character has never been before.
Almost like
Um,
someone good to know. Like
yes, that's such a good
yeah.
way to put it. Thank you. And then the last one, gorgeous. So I was like,
Oh,
okay, all right, we doing this. And then I rolled a 6 for our interaction. So I was like, I met this person at a bar, and the flirting went well, and they're gorgeous and strong and also very nice to me.
I met my future.
Right. Yeah, like I didn't expect it to happen, but even then I was like, okay, I had before that also had a very good positive interaction with somebody else that had a lot of positive adjectives about them. Um and so I was like, all right, I'm not gonna like read into that too far, despite my romantic heart saying like make this character fall in love with Socorro Blankenship immediately. Legend and Socorro forever. Carve their initials into a tree.
What a power couple. What
Legend.
a power couple.
Amazing. So then the immediate next day I rolled something else. Let me actually flip to it and see.
And I just want to give a little bit of context. So you essentially have 4 encounters a day, and each encounter you roll a d4 to see how many things that you get. So there's 4 things: locations, neighbors, items, events. And you roll that d4, and let's say you get 2. You get to choose which 2 you want. So you can decide, oh, I want a neighbor and an item today. Then you can like build up your encounters from there. But you get 4 of them a day: 1 in the morning, 1 in the afternoon, 1 in the evening, and 1 at night.
Yes. So my night encounter was meeting Socorro at the dive bar, and then the next day in the afternoon, I'm very indecisive. So if I have a sort of like open situation where I'm like, I don't know what I want this day to hold, because I, especially early on, have a tendency to roll to determine what my character might do in a situation, while I get to know them, like while I as a player get to know the character. And so a lot of the time I'll roll that d4 to see how many of each, like how many categories I might interact with on a given day. So like for the morning, I'll roll a d4 and I'll get 3. I'll roll 3 additional d4s to see which 3 categories. So I assign each of them a number: 1, 2, 3, and 4.
Oh, okay, yeah.
So because I can get caught up in indecision.
Which
and
things work perfectly together, and
exactly
trying to make sure everything's, continuity,
yeah.
and like everything's all good.
Yeah, I also feel like it gives the game a higher degree of its own agency, because I didn't get to decide that the next afternoon Socorro Blankenship would come visit me at my house. It just happened.
Yeah, and how sweet is that as well?
Right.
Like, it was completely up to the fate of the dice that
Yeah,
happened, and it's like,
exactly.
oh my god.
I know. They came over and I rolled another 6. So they're the only person so far that I have 2 positive interactions with. Just
Very
saying.
nice.
I'm not forecasting it, but I'm forecasting it. So all of that being said, I have sort of, so this is very exciting for me to get to tell somebody else about this, because I don't think I've actually talked to anybody about how my stint in Valerian Creek is going for Legend. So
I love that's their name now.
it's perfect, honestly. I'm gonna sort of talk you through my first day and how I rolled it, and explain like how I go about this, I guess, and then sort of summarize what's happened since then. So I do all of my rolls first, like up front. I lay out my journal with a section. I label the day, so day 1, morning, the location, and then the event. And that's not necessarily tied to the locations and events category. Just I know that whatever I'm doing it somewhere, and something's going to happen, right? Whether it's me finding an item or me meeting a neighbor or an actual like capital E event happening because I rolled one, that varies, but I split the time frame into the location and the event. So then I roll my d4 to determine how many different items I'm going to work into whatever happened that morning. And this time, I think I rolled a 2, and I ended up rolling a location, the river, and an event, unexpected visitor. So in that case, since I wasn't at home, I was like an unexpected encounter with another person. And then, so I met my first neighbor when I went out to the river to kind of check it all out, on my first day in my new cabin. And then that was in the morning. The afternoon, I was back home. I had a sudden realization, and that was tied to an item. And it was, let me see, number 9. It was an item that was exactly what I needed. So I kind of decided like, okay, so I'm at home. I find something that's exactly what I need. It must have been something that my character's uncle left for her. His name is Uncle Ira. So I'm like, okay, she found something that Uncle Ira left that she needed that he didn't put in a place that was easy to find. So I decided that was going to be a key to the root cellar out back, where he stored sort of all of his monster hunting gear, which is obviously very important, right? Because it's like, okay, what would be something that Legend would need? And then the evening, I went to the grocery store. I found something that somebody else had lost, and I decided that it was a handkerchief that was actually magical, because there are magic items in this game, and it's kind of up to you to decide the details of that. I haven't really fleshed it out. I just could tell it was magical because Legend has those psychometric capabilities that we talked about before. So when she touches things, she can recognize whether it's magical, whether it's non-magical. And then if she puts more effort into it, which is, there's a mechanic where you roll to use your talent, she can suss out more about it.
Absolutely.
And so then I met another neighbor, which was, let me see, her name is Johnny Numbers. And
Johnny Numbers?
Johnny with an IE.
Iconic.
I saw Johnny, JOHNNY, and I had already rolled she, her pronouns for my character, Johnny Numbers, but one of my cousins had a best friend. She was a girl and her name was Johnny, and she was named after her grandpa. I always thought that was so cool. So Johnny Numbers,
really cool.
To Johnny in real
What
life.
a cool name.
Right? I know. Like, I just think that's neat. So it belonged to a neighbor who has a disability, and that was Johnny Numbers. And I, in general, as a person, am really kind of like, I hesitate to say fascinated by, because I know that's a very loaded term when you're talking about a disability that somebody can have. But from a medical and like anatomical standpoint, the changes that happen to your brain after a traumatic brain injury are so vast and so varied that I read about them a lot. And there's something called chromatic atopsia, where you gradually lose your ability to see in color. And that can happen after a traumatic brain injury. And so I decided,
that's super cool.
Yeah, and so I decided,
I guess I shouldn't say cool, but that's very interesting.
Yeah. It's unfortunate and it's interesting. And so just out of personal interest, right? Because it's just a me game, so I can work in whatever I happen to be hyperfixating on at the time, reading a lot of articles about. I can just nudge that in here somehow. So that's Johnny Numbers has chromatic atopsia, and she asked me to help her pick out some things in the grocery store Because if you think about it, a lot of things are colored, like color coded by label, right? They're not necessarily marketed in such a fashion where it's very clear what the difference is between things. Instead, we rely on our color vision to differentiate, like, oh, well, this is caffeine free Diet Coke. This is regular Diet Coke because we know the box is a different color.
Yeah, it just becomes easier because we get used to, like, just spotting the colors alone is easy.
Exactly.
Because that's just how we develop over time. But yeah, if you can't see the colors, it's going to be it's more effort. It's more work that you have to put into it, and it's more of a not really. I mean, I'm sure it could be a struggle in situations, but it's definitely a different experience.
Yeah, exactly. And for the record, for anybody who's interested, you can help people who are blind and low vision through an app called Be My Eyes, where they can put in requests for help, and they will turn on their sort of, I think, their phone camera or their laptop camera, depending on what device they're using, and they can ask you to help them with things that would be made much easier if they were seeing, or if they had a higher degree of vision than what they have. So
That's
it's called
really
Be My
cool.
Eyes. Yeah. So I highly recommend checking that out if you're ever interested in helping anybody in that situation. But so I took that, like, the fact that I know that you can do that for people through that app, and I said, well, why couldn't Legend do that for Johnny Numbers in the grocery store? Right after she figured out, like, oh, hey, is this your handkerchief? I think I saw you drop it. And Johnny Numbers says, oh, yeah, while you're here, would you mind helping me with this? And, like, I just help her do her grocery shopping, because I had also rolled a very good interaction with her too. And then after that was when I went to the gas station and I found a ceremonial knife in the parking lot.
As one does.
As one does. And it actually turned out to belong to the 18-year-old girl working the register. Her name's Claire Castro, and her adjectives that I had rolled were, like,
These
really
names.
intense, devout, secretive, and self-serious.
Holy shit.
She's up to
These
some shit.
And these adjectives, absolutely insane. I need to know
Right?
what this generator is. So
I'll send you the link to it. Yeah, let me see. I had it pulled up on my phone because I'm gonna have you roll, and we're gonna do a day together, or maybe just one encounter, because I don't even know how long we've been recording.
We've been recording for, I think, almost an hour-ish.
Okay. Yeah. We'll see what we have time for.
Yeah.
It's just called randomwordgenerator.com, and then they have a bunch of different options where you can choose. So I use their adjective generator and their name generator. And I don't always use the first adjectives or names that they produced. You can have them, like, generate several if you want to be able to scroll through a list. And sometimes, like, depending on the vibe of the situation, like where I meet one of these neighbors, I'll say, no, I don't think that's right. Or, like, the general description of the neighbor based on the number that I rolled for the gameplay. One of them, number 9, is a human who is very quiet, and his name is Joaquin Nunez, and one of the first adjectives that I randomly generated for him was, like, boisterous. I was like, that doesn't make sense.
Yeah.
So
it's cool to be able to pick and choose. Sorry, I'm slightly moving away from my mic. But yeah, no, honestly, I like hearing the sort of development of, these are the things I rolled, here's what I interpreted them as. Like, so seriously, that is something I've been getting really fascinated with, is interpreting just very simple information into something much bigger. The episode, it's not going to be before this one exactly. It's going to be before this one, but not the one before this. We talk, it's actually the next episode I'm coming out with in this current date of February 20th. But it's a game called 10 Candles, and I don't know if you know what 10 Candles is, but part of the character creation is writing down words on cards. So usually one that is more positive and another one that's more negative. And then you take those words and you hand them off to the other people at the table.
Oh,
You
wow.
don't get them. And so you have to make it so that those words can be interpreted in many different ways. But you hand them off, and then whoever gets them gets to decide, how am I going to play a character based off of what I just got? And it's super, super cool. So like hearing kind of your thought process, and even being able to interpret like the adapt every single time adapt. Oh my god, this is embarrassing.
Adjectives.
Thank you. I'm
I
sorry.
got you. No, you good. You good.
Being able to interpret those into whatever you're feeling for these characters is so, so interesting. I find it to be so cool. I love it so much.
It's my favorite part of the game, honestly, is sort of doing the mental math, the creative puzzling of like, okay, I rolled to find something fucking weird in the parking lot of a gas station. And
What now?
yeah, and I already determined that this gas station is like empty. So the one neighbor that I encountered here, who is like extremely serious and very intense teenage girl, like what is happening? I still haven't figured it out. And like Legend in her journal wrote like, maybe I shouldn't have given her that knife back, but I can almost guarantee that she's gonna see some really weird shit from me. So I do not. I want to be on her good side. So yeah, I'll give her her knife back, and I told her to carry it in her purse or something. Like put it away somewhere. Don't just leave it loose in your pocket or whatever led to you dropping it in your parking lot. You know,
That's so funny.
I'm really excited for that to kind of come back around, and just see when or where Claire Castro is going to pop up next and what sort of weird shit I can get her involved in. I'm super excited about that. So if you're down, I would love to have your help rolling day 6.
Yes, absolutely.
Oh, I forgot. I was going to give you a sort of less detailed summary. So after that, day 2, I did some exploring, and I actually encountered my first dungeon. So there are dungeons in this game. The description says, there are lots of strange places in the woods. The town sewers have many secrets. If you can imagine a dungeon for a location, it exists. Once you attempt a dungeon, you must wait 7 days before attempting it again or trying another. If you've successfully cleared a dungeon, it cannot be attempted again at that location until the next season, which is to say for 90 more journaling days. This is one of the things that I have modified. So I mentioned that sometimes I will roll to randomly determine like whether I get a location, neighbor, item, or event, that sort of thing. I also, because this is Legend's job, I decided that she would be more aggressive than just going once a week to sort of fuck around in a dungeon once she finds one. So
just how she is.
Yeah, exactly. Like this is her whole thing. It's literally all she really has to do besides wander around town. And like if she does that too much, then the neighbors are going to start asking like, "Oh, well, what do you do for a living?" And she can't just be like, "I'm tend the forest," right? Like theoretically, sure, but that kind of doesn't really pass. It's not it doesn't fly.
Can't get
So
suspicious.
yeah, exactly. It's like, okay, well, whatever. Not that there aren't a bunch of fucking weird people in Valerian Creek, but you don't want to draw attention to yourself when you have mystical powers and remember hundreds of years of history.
Absolutely.
Yeah, so she wants to lay low. So she typically passes her time, I think, doing research and trying to clear dungeons. And so I have, for my own sake, to sort of better accord with my character, decided that I'll wait 3 days before attempting a dungeon. So we could, if we wanted, attempt a dungeon today, depending what we roll. So my first dungeon, I found one of Uncle Ira's markers off the highway while I was driving around. I explored it and I got through a couple rooms before I encountered a pit trap that I couldn't get around. So you get your 4 sort of periods of the day, and then you get a bonus action that's sort of like indicative of what you've done with your free time for that day, outside of whatever events happen. And so that night, Legend either looked for or built a ladder. I didn't really determine. Oh no, she stole one. She stole a ladder from the archaeological dig. Um, yeah. So yeah, right. So attempted the dungeon, didn't get very far. Decided to eat my feelings in pancakes. And while I was at the diner, I saw a weird shadow out the window that nobody else seemed to be noticing or acknowledging. So that was my first spirit neighbor encounter, with a spirit named Message, who is sort of the tattletale of Valerian Creek. And Message, all of the spirits, I use they them for all of the spirits just because of the sort of like the less specific, like I want them to be more conceptual, than
more like an idea than a reality,
than a character, right? Like their character is defined by the idea or ideals that they embody, right? What is left over. And so I opted not to like assign any of the spirits any gendered pronouns, so they all get they them. But Message is really tall, much taller than me. That's what the thing said. And they are nosy, puzzled, and protective. So those 3 adjectives, I was like, all right, they're always up to something. They're trying to figure things out, and they're very, very protective of this place. And so I was like, all right, so they see something else going on. They don't want the spirits to be blamed for it. And that's what Uncle Iroh was doing there, was helping to sort of clear the dungeons, get rid of monsters, make sure the spirits don't get blamed for things. So the spirits are getting blamed for messing around at the archaeological dig, which was the night location that I rolled that day. Turns out, though, it was a cryptid. One of the neighbor options is number 19, a spirit that is actually a cryptid. So I determined that it was gonna be the Tennessee Wild Man, because I looked up Tennessee cryptids, and the Wild Man just kind of seemed like a very ineffectual, like he would sort of walk around outside of people's yard, like outside of people's houses, like walk around in their yards and then get yelled at and leave.
Honestly, I get it.
I relate, right? Like somebody yells at me to get out of their yard, I'm like, okay, sorry, man. God, okay. So he's just like a big hairy dude who's actually not that bad. The adjectives that I rolled for him, it's going to take me a second to find them. But his name is Dave, aka the Tennessee Wild Man, actually a cryptid. His adjectives are fumbling, mellow, and shy.
I love him.
Right? And so he was messing around at the archaeological dig because he got curious, but he also like fucked up a bunch of things, like knocked shit over and made messes. And so then people were like, oh, poltergeist, like the spirits around here are unsettled because we're digging around here. And it's like, no, it's Dave. It's Dave. Yeah, so Message was like, hey, can you clear the air here? Like, get Dave to stop fucking around so we'll stop getting blamed for things. So I did. Well, I didn't roll very well. I actually rolled a very poor encounter. So I said that when I arrived, Dave just ran immediately. I didn't get to talk to him. I think that's happened 3 times now. I've rolled the most encounters with Dave. Only one of them has been good.
Man, poor Dave.
I know, he's just scared, dude. He's just a shy guy.
A relationship and get to understand who this man is and what his motives are.
Yeah. Ironically, the next day I was out looking around in the woods. I found an abandoned house and I saw a bunch of noise, I heard a bunch of noise and saw a disturbance out in the woods. Turned out it was Dave. Had a bad encounter, rolled like a 1 or a 2. Dave ran away. And then literally the next location that I rolled was Dave's hideout. So I decided I had followed him.
I love that.
And yeah, and he wasn't there, but I saw the fisherman that I met in my very first morning encounter. His name's Foster Buck, and I saw him leaving
Foster
fish. Foster Buck, a 21-year-old fisherman, with a bunch of scars on his face. I don't know what that's about yet, but they're there.
But they're there.
Yeah. Yep. So Foster Buck was leaving fish for Dave. So it's clear that some of the townspeople, at least one of them, knows that Dave is not a spirit and that he's out there. They're aware of his hideout. So then I went home. I just dug through some of the stuff my uncle left me. I think I found an item that was like an item that's a hand-me-down. So it was his collection of Hawaiian shirts. One of which I wore that night to the Foxfire Tav, which is the dive bar where I met Socorro Blankenship and we talked about plants. I decided I had a huge crush based on the adjectives and everything that I had rolled and how well the encounter went. So I went home, and with my bonus action for that day, I made a bracelet for Socorro Blankenship because I decided I know one of the bonus actions you can do is to craft a magical item, which gives you 1 reroll when you use it. So then if you sort of build up a cache of magic items, then you can use them as needed if you roll badly and you really want a different result. And so I decided that Legend braids like friendship bracelets, and like in doing so, through touch, imbues them with magic.
Ooh, I love that.
Thank you. So then that means also that she ends up wearing an assload of friendship bracelets that she herself has made. Like just all of these sort of braided bracelets. And
I love it.
I wrote that like part of their conversation was that Socorro had noticed and complimented Legend's bracelets, and so then Legend went home and made one and was gonna
these are just so fun for just creating little stories.
It's so good. Oh, I found in the abandoned house, I forgot to mention, this is one of my favorite stupid things I've put in here so far. I found a Tamagotchi. I found an old Tamagotchi that still worked after I replaced the batteries, and I named the Tamagotchi Machete. So I introduced Socorro to Machete while we were talking at the bar. Then the next day, at home, I found a stack of library books that Uncle Ira had checked out 6 years ago and hidden under his bed. Yeah, so there's... And I mentioned earlier, I think Joaquin Nunez is the very quiet human. He works for the library. And we have a service here where library staff will drive around and deliver books to elderly people. Or
so
people
cool.
who are ill. Yeah, it's really sweet. So like you can put in a request and have books delivered to you. And they did it before COVID. And then I think it got really popular during COVID because library workers could just drop off the books and then come like get them back off of a person's porch, sanitize them. It's one of the like small town things. So I decided that Joaquin Nunez does that. And also apparently there's some beef between Uncle Ira and Joaquin Nunez since Uncle Ira was stealing library books. And Joaquin Nunez is very serious and no nonsense. So that's like not a prank. Not a person I would pull a prank on.
That's fine. Very quick, I do have a question. Within the game, so I don't think there's actually something that specifically says give everyone an occupation. Is that just something you naturally do to kind of fit these characters into the world?
Yeah, it kind of helps, I think, for me, to connect the things that I've rolled about them. So I skipped over mentioning when I had met Joaquin Nunez, but I met him at a crossroad. And he was I don't remember why I decided he was like fixing a flat tire on his car. But I rolled something where he both gave me a book and asked me to return an item that somebody had lost. And so that was kind of like, I was like, all right, what is this guy that I meet at a crossroads going to be doing that he's just giving me a book? Right.
That's
so I decided
so
like, okay,
funny.
he works for the library. He makes deliveries. He found a book that does not belong to the library. And Uncle Ira was very good at figuring out who lost items belonged to. I haven't decided if Uncle Ira is also capable of psychometry in the same way that Legend is. I don't know. I just decided like Uncle Ira was always good at finding things that people had lost and getting lost things back to their people. And of course, Legend is also very, very good at that given her talent. So Joaquin Nunez was like, here, your uncle used to do this for me. Can you do this? Does this run in the family? And Legend was like, sure, I'll figure it out.
Oh, that's fun.
Yeah. So it was just like, I kind of decided that because it made sense in my brain. It was a sort of link for me to explain what somebody at a crossroads would be doing, giving me a book. And then I decided that the lost item that he wanted me to find the owner of was probably also a book based on the fact that he's, picking up books all the time.
I love it. Okay, yeah,
Yeah.
I was just very curious and like kind of your approach to that.
Yeah. A lot of the time I use an occupation or something else to sort of tie together the pieces of the encounter that I rolled. Because I like connecting them, right? Like Foster Buck, I decided was a fisherman because he was my neighbor number 3, a human with practical skills. So he could have been doing anything, but I met him by the river outside of my cabin. So I decided that he's a fisherman who likes fishing that spot, and Uncle Ira would always let him fish there. So that was like our initial encounter, was having that conversation, me telling him that he can still fish there. So yeah, that's one of those details that I find is like not necessarily now that I'm looking at it, most of these features of the neighbors, like their brief descriptions as you roll them, they don't necessarily dictate what the neighbor might do for a living. And so having wiggle room in that respect, I think gives me a lot to play with to explain like why this person is where they are, right? Like Johnny Numbers being at the grocery store, everybody goes to the grocery store, right? So that's not necessarily linked. But yeah, I think it also helps me flesh them out to kind of think about what they're doing on a day-to-day basis too.
Yeah, it gives you a good starting point so that you know, and that can also change how you use them in the future with journal entries. Maybe you end up, maybe the location, if you don't roll one, maybe you are at a location where they work. So at the library itself, all of that.
Yeah.
Very, very cool. So I don't want this to run super long. So if you want to finish up the kind of lead up to the day, then we can do the 6.
Yeah.
The day 6, that would be great.
Yeah. So I basically Socorro came to visit me at my house, and then I went to graveyard, caught Dave following me. He fell out of a tree. Still counts as me catching him. And then the most interesting thing that happened since then was that I went home and a package was delivered with Uncle Ira's name on it. But when I tried to open it, it was a music box that tried to stab me. So I can't remember. I wish I had written down what item specifically that was. I think I might have put it in my little items list here. I do track the items that I roll on an inventory sheet, and I decide, like, I keep note of if I've kept something, if I return it to somebody, if I give it to somebody else, just as like,
still have it or not.
Yeah, and as story beats. So let me see. I think it was something that turns out to be dangerous.
Ah.
Yeah, and so I was like, okay, I haven't been here that long, but Uncle Ira was here for a while, and Uncle Ira can get up to some nonsense, right? Like, who knows what he was doing, so, or what enemies he might have made.
Yeah, maybe it's
Um,
a nemesis that just decides to attack through music boxes.
Yeah, exactly. I don't remember why I picked a music box. Oh, because it was like I feel like the fact that it says it turns out to be dangerous is that it is innocuous at first
Hmm.
glance, right? And so I was thinking like, okay, what is it that I might get delivered that I would then interact with in a way that it could turn around and hurt me or nearly hurt me? And there's a one of my favorite stupid videos on the internet is this guy made a mechanical like a mechanically motor driven sorry, this guy made a motor driven mechanically operational tentacle machine that's like one tentacle in it just like whips around when you turn it on, and he attached a knife to it.
Oh no.
I
Why
don't
would
know
you do
why.
that?
He did not specify. He just said, I've got a knife wielding tentacle. If anybody else would like to come turn this off, that'd be fine by me. That's like the extent of the video. And it's just the tentacle box like flailing. So I kind of had like, I like working cursed objects and stuff that I think are funny from memes
That
into
is
stuff like this.
insane.
So I was like, all right, so it's a music box that then I go to open it naturally to like see what's inside of it or what music will play. And something lashes out with a blade attached to it. And I think it did cut me because um I rolled a d6 to kind of figure out like how my interaction with that event went. And I rolled pretty low, so I decided that it did manage to like cut my arm or something. Um and
That's so funny though.
yeah, and so then I tried to use my talent and I rolled poorly to use my talent, so I didn't get any information off of the box. Uh,
Oh, I'm so curious what like the outcome of
Man, me
this box is
too.
gonna be.
I don't know. I'll keep you posted if I figure something out. Um, so I got that package, and then the next day, not a lot interesting happened, but I did a couple times roll the same like I see a flurry of activity. I think I rolled that a couple times on day 5. So I have a feeling that I am being watched. Previously, it was by Dave. I'm not sure now because I didn't roll a neighbor in that encounter. It was just
Hmm.
it was just an event, and the event was a flurry of activity
Man, justice be done
nearby.
though.
Yeah. Yeah. So I met another spirit. I went back to the dive bar later that evening. Um notice something that nobody else seems to notice, and I also rolled a spirit neighbor, so those two really went hand in hand for me.
Oh, amazing.
um, yeah, they led me to the graveyard, where I found a note addressed to me.
Oh shoot.
Uh-huh. I haven't figured out yet what it says. I haven't decided yet. I'm still thinking about it. So I left some room for that journal entry, and I'm stewing on that one still. um
That's
I
amazing.
met an artist who was painting a landscape of the graveyard, and I had a very bad encounter with her, and she just insulted my Hawaiian shirt.
Oh, I'm just,
So,
before we get into doing like the day 6 and all of that, I
yeah,
I also want to ask, how long do you think it takes you about to do these journal entries?
it depends how much I want to write and how sort of dedicated uh, I am to actually writing in a
Hmm.
given week. So, I've been doing this for intermittently for a couple months now, just writing like a little bit at a time, and I'm just about to start day 6. So if I was more like if I did it more regularly, I'm sure, and if I wrote less for each journal entry, then that would sort of help the time pass more quickly, but I'm not really in a rush. I'm enjoying how I'm doing it right now. And there have been a couple times where I didn't feel like writing, but I just wanted to roll the encounters and think about it. So I've done that, and then I go back later and I write it when I feel like writing. And
that's what I was curious about. As you still haven't resolved the thing with the letter, and I was curious, like, do you just address like, if you get stuck on a part, do you just move forward and address it later, stuff like that? That's very cool.
Yeah, because I know, like, typically I'll write about 3 to 4 pages for a journal entry. Some have gotten wordier, some have been shorter, but then I know kind of if I'm not ready to fully write it, but I want to move forward and see what happens next and maybe come back, then I'll just leave 3 or 4 pages blank and set up my next day, which is what I'm about to do now. Because I have day 5 half written up until I got to the note, because I just kind of was like, I don't.
Oh no.
Yeah, I haven't decided. I haven't been able to quite nail down what exactly I want it to say. But it was left on Uncle Ira's grave, so I think it might have been from the person that sent that box.
Oh, that would be fun.
Kind of where I'm going, because the box, like, the parcel was addressed to Uncle Ira, and it ended up hurting me. So I'm thinking, like, if it was somebody who didn't realize that Uncle Ira was gone and that I had moved in, they might be like, stuff that wasn't meant for you, but also don't try to figure out what's going on.
Oh, I love that. Maybe.
Yeah, so that's kind of where
there's
I'm leaning.
something lurking.
Yeah, I feel like we can be chill as long as you don't dig where your uncle was digging. And, like, that's literally my entire job. So I'm sure that's going to devolve.
Oh, I love that.
Yeah, I'm excited. So that's kind of where I left off. I went home and I tried to use my bonus action to use my talent to get glimpses of anything from the note, but I'm bad at my job, I guess, because I rolled poorly for that again. So I think I wrote that I got glimpses, but nothing particularly useful. I think I rolled like a 3. So I'm just going to integrate some superfluous information that I might be able to come back to later, and use as, like, oh, this is a clue that it was, like, this person that left it, but at the time I maybe hadn't met this neighbor yet, so it was.
Oh, I like that.
Yeah, so it's not useful to me right now, but it's, like, relatively high on the D6, like a 3, lower part of mid tier. So, like, not useful now, maybe a little bit useful later.
Yeah, that's really cool.
Yeah.
Again, just the pacing within solo games, I think, is very fascinating because, again, if you have a busy schedule, if you don't have a group to play TTRPGs with, if, like, anything that makes it so that you just don't really have the time, really try solo RPGs. They are so fascinating, and there's so many out there, and you don't just have to do journaling games. Because there's more, like, game books that are similar to, like, choose your own adventure books that'll usually that'll let you have stats and stuff like that. There are actual, like, kind of more so quote unquote games. I would say The Quiet Year is a good example of sort of
absolutely.
I don't know if I would call it an RPG, but it's very similar to where you're building up a civilization. You could do that on your own if you would really like. You can do it with other people. There's even the game that we already covered on the RPG Goblin called Rune, which is like a Dark Souls solo RPG. That's more like a game as well, where you play kind of these pre-written adventures and you see how you fare against, these evil things and things that are trying to kill you. So solo journaling RPGs aren't the only option. However, they are a very cool option if you like the storytelling elements and want to build relationships and characters and all of that.
Yeah. That's my favorite part about it, honestly. Like, I've just wanted something lighthearted that I can sort of escape into, that gives me, because I like writing, and so to have something that gives me an outlet that I don't have to completely generate with my own steam, so to speak, that's really, really good for me personally, to, like, be able to exercise my creativity and my energy when I have it through this medium with, like, pretty minimal rules and everything, which we're going to show you. So
Yeah.
I am going to have you roll. I was thinking maybe we just do the morning of day 6 so you can kind of get, because the rolling process is the same for every chunk of the day aside from the bonus action where you have options for what you can do. Basically, you pick one from 4 different things and then you roll a d6. You have to
Mhm.
get a 4 or higher to succeed on whatever it is you're trying to do. So like when I've mentioned that I try to use my talent with my bonus action, I've rolled a d6 and I've gotten a 1, 2, or 3 on the times that I've not succeeded. So
Yes.
I'm thinking, what if we do just morning, but we kind of, instead of rolling the d4 to see which things we do one of each. So as though we had rolled a 4 on the d4, just so we can kind of integrate everything.
Oh, absolutely. I love that.
Cool. All right. So I always start with location. I just kind of actually typically bounce around, but I always do location first. So if you want, Willow, to roll me a d20.
I got one of Emily's dice here. Pink dreams.
Yay!
Let's go. So D20 on location, and we have a 13, which is a graveyard. Or
13. I'm
the
back at the
graveyard.
graveyard. I'm back at the graveyard. Okay. So this is where I was when I found that note. I was visiting Uncle Ira's grave. And that was actually last night. So I think I found the note on the grave and I probably went back to see.
Maybe
Um,
something else is there.
yeah, and if I maybe might be able to find an undertaker or somebody who might know, somebody who might have seen something. So then I like to do the event next. So if you would roll me
All
another
right.
d20.
Let me scroll up. Event. Oh,
Mhm.
I thought my cat was moving around. Sorry. Event. D20. Another 13.
Ooh, lucky number. Oh,
Minor tragedy befalls a neighbor.
oh
Hmm.
no. Oh, a minor tragedy in a graveyard. All right.
Yeah.
So
Oh, this is interesting.
yeah, the next so if for instance I had rolled um the d4 and I got maybe like 2 on that. So I would either pick or roll if I'm feeling indecisive and I don't want to pick which categories from location, neighbor, item, or event. If I had already rolled for the location and then I rolled the event and it said something happened to a neighbor, I would ignore the roll that I got because this one is like coupled with there being a neighbor involved, if that makes
Yeah.
sense. So I kind of play it fast and loose. Like I don't live by the
Or you could
rolls.
always add a neighbor in if it's something that you really want to explore as well.
Exactly. Yeah. You are, it's ultimately it's up to you, right? Because
It's your
that's
story.
again, yeah, it's your story. It's completely yours and you can do with it what you will. So let's see which neighbor is experiencing something
Oh
unfortunate.
no.
Ooh,
All right, neighbor D20. 10. Human
10.
human runs a location.
The Undertaker,
Oh no, the
right?
Undertaker had a
Right. So like
minor
we
tragedy.
could roll for the location, but I think it makes a lot of sense since I was at the graveyard last night. I'm back there this morning. It makes sense to me that Legend, as a sort of slightly investigative person, she's
Legend
not very
as a legend.
methodical at all. Yeah, but she found a note with her name on it that was sent or left for her by whoever sent her this box or whoever sent Uncle Ira this box.
Mhm.
Um, so it feels logical to me that she would go back to the graveyard looking for the Undertaker, right? And so it's human who runs a location. That's is sometimes it just works out so beautifully. All right, but this is a neighbor that I actually haven't met before. I haven't rolled a 10 yet on my neighbor's chart. So I'm going to make some notes about this person. And I already have my names list and my adjectives pulled up. Would you go ahead and roll me a d6 so we can figure out the Undertaker or the groundskeeper. Is it an undertaker? I always think of the
Undertaker, I
wrestler.
think. Undertaker might be more of like a place where you get coffins and stuff like that, but I'm really not
They
sure. I
prepare.
Yeah, I think they might prepare more so, but I think like groundskeeper or something like that. Undertaker just sounds spookier, so I get it. The
Graveyard keeper.
grave, the person who takes
Yeah,
care of
graveyard
graves.
keeper. Oh,
Graveyard
that's a
keeper.
video game.
Oh, is it? I got a 4 on the D6.
Okay, so that is she, they. So let's see.
I love the slight sounds of you writing on the journal.
Thank you. All right. So she, let's see. Do you have your D10?
Yes, I do.
You roll it for me 4 times. We're gonna determine their
Um,
age. I start with a base age of 14. So they will
oh,
be
very
at
fun.
least, yeah.
8,
Okay.
3,
Okay.
5,
Okay.
1.
Okay, so it's 17. So 14 plus 17, they're
Okay.
31 years old.
Oh, I
Um,
see. Okay. So you just
yeah.
essentially add it onto that. Gotcha. I was just about to ask about
Yeah.
the kind of system around that.
Occasionally I'm like I'm gonna add like a D20 or two to that if I feel like they might be an older person because I want
Hmm.
to try to incorporate neighbors of all ages.
I love
Um,
that.
for a while I was rolling a D100 for age, but I kept rolling children and I hated that. Uh,
I
so
don't want
it's like,
everyone to be a child.
yeah, I don't want to involve any children in this. So thus far they've all been like, um, I mean, I have had one. Claire Castro is 18. Foster Buck is 21. Um, the artist that I mentioned, her name's Maggie Magdalena. She's 60. Johnny Numbers is 31. Socorro Blankenship is 33. Elke Rasmussen, who is maybe my favorite neighbor that I've rolled so far, they have a weird hobby. So I decided they break things for fun and then make like mosaic art out of the broken stuff. Um,
I love that for them.
yeah, they're 48. Joaquin Nunez is 50. Our new graveyard keeper is 31. So yeah, and then I don't roll an age for the spirits. I just give them
They're
adjectives.
ageless.
They are. They are eternal. So, um, she, they, 31 years old, graveyard keeper. And now I'm gonna grab. Should we do name first or adjectives first?
I feel like name to set the vibe.
Name. Okay. I'm gonna generate 30 random names, randomwordgenerator.com, really putting in the work. So it gives you an option, male names, female names, or both. And they have a decent number on here that are actually pretty neutral. So that's one of the things that I like about this generator. Sometimes I will also splice first and last names.
Mhm.
So I'm going to give you a few options. Rhea Stone,
Ooh.
Noble Ewing,
Noble Ewing?
uh-huh,
That's amazing.
Casey Cunningham, or Carla Waters.
I mean, I just can't help but be attracted to the Noble Ewing.
Right. I keep picking the best names for all of these. Like Valerian Creek is the town of people who have fucking badass names.
It's just a
Noble.
feature.
Yeah. They're living the life that we long for.
Yeah.
So noble is going to be.
If only there were
I
spirits
roll
and
right, vibing. I'm gonna give noble one adjective at a time, because I feel like that makes it easier for me to consider it truly random. I'm not super truly random with their names because I like picking names from the list, making something cool. But I want their adjectives to actually be random. Some of these do pick like adjectives that are only suitable for objects or places, so I would skip those. But the first one is resolute. Uh-huh. I also feel like I'm expanding my vocabulary playing this game.
yeah. That's actually a good way to view it, you know? You learned more.
Resolute. Thoughtless.
Oh.
She fell in a hole, didn't she? She fell in a hole.
Oh no.
I would call her third adjective is offbeat. Resolute, thoughtless, and offbeat. She fell in a hole and is being really stubborn about it. She's determined to get out on her own. I decided. So then, since we have the place and the event and the neighbor, go ahead and roll me 2d6 and tell me what numbers you get.
2d6. Some nice rolling noises.
Yeah.
Woo. A 5? Actually, 2 5s. Double 5.
Double 5s. Okay, so that's 2 positive encounters. The first one for the graveyard. Hell yeah. Where is this? Oh, it was 13. Here we go. So my first encounter at the graveyard was not positive, and then I also had a pretty bad interaction with the painter that I met there last night. So it's nice to have a positive interaction on the board with the graveyard.
And it's when someone falls into a hole.
I think maybe we help her out because we have a good interaction with her too. A 5 is like solidly good.
Oh, absolutely.
So I think maybe Noble fell into a freshly dug grave that they hadn't noticed. Was there and was being very stubborn about finding their own way out of it, but we were able to kind of convince them to let us help. And Legend actually does have a ladder in her truck because if you remember, she got stymied by a pit trap when she tried to do that dungeon, and so she had spent her bonus action finding a ladder, which conveniently I was able to steal from the archaeological dig. So I've got a stolen ladder in the back of my truck, but it's a ladder. It's not that distinctive. So I'll use my stolen ladder to help.
It just kind of reminds me, I know we talked about it when we were talking Monster of the Week, but the oops move, just like slowly collecting various items and then it becomes useful in the future. I love it.
Yeah, absolutely. That is 100% why I made that inventory page on my thing, because like you track your items and as you collect things, you can actually make a collection. Mm-hmm. So one of the things that I decided Legend collects is keys, right? So, yeah, I just think they're neat. So, Legend has the key to the root cellar is currently the only key in her collection, but sometimes when I feel it's justified, I will have her find a key somewhere. So, thus far, that's the only one. Yeah, but there are some rules about making collections. Where you choose like an item theme and you find, so like my item theme is keys and I'm to find and collect thematic items for each of the 20 item prompts. So a key for each of those 20 item prompts that you can roll.
One that is broken, one that someone lost, one that is handmade, all of that.
Precisely.
Oh, that's
one
so
you want
fun.
to keep but shouldn't. Yeah, one that makes you feel a little ill.
Item of great value. Oh, that's so fun. Oh, I love that.
So, speaking of items, that's our fourth thing on our list. So, we find that Noble Ewing has fallen to a freshly dug grave. We succeed convincing her to let us help her out. And then there's going to be an item involved somehow. So if you would roll me one last d20.
Absolutely. And that item will be an item that makes you nostalgic.
Ooh, okay. This is actually this is what I rolled when I found the Tamagotchi
Oh.
because they make me Emily nostalgic. And I was like, Legend and I are the same age, right? So thinking about that, like Tamagotchi makes me nostalgic. I think maybe Legend goes back to visit Uncle Ira's grave and see if there's another note left. And finds something that somebody left, like maybe a photo of Uncle Ira or something. Yeah.
But that also still makes me so spooked out by whatever this, like, nemesis person is, because I feel like that could be something connected within that as well.
Ooh, do you want to roll for it and see if it is?
Ooh, yeah.
Roll me a d6 and we'll range it from like malevolent being 1 to friendly being 6.
If I get a 1, I swear. I got a 2.
Okay, yeah, so that's like, yeah, somebody who was maybe not friends.
Is there maybe something written on the back of the picture or something?
Ooh. What if it's like one of those, like it's a picture where Uncle Ira clearly didn't know that he was being photographed?
Oh no. Like it looks, it almost looks like a normal picture at first, and it's like, oh look,
yeah.
you know? And
that's why it's nostalgic. And then I turn it around and it's like, ooh.
Oh, I love that so much. Oh. Someone's
maybe
being a
it's
little
not
weird.
Like a threatening. Yeah, maybe it's not a threatening note, but I recognize the handwriting. It just says like Ira, and I recognize the handwriting from the package and from the note that was left to me.
Oh, I really like that. Absolutely.
Hell yeah. What an eventful morning.
I know, right?
At the graveyard. Yeah. That's why I'm glad it breaks it into like chunks of the day as opposed to like
the entire day
trying to put a time limit on it, because some of this stuff I'm like, yeah, okay, I just kind of mess around in my cabin for a while and find something interesting. And then other times I'm like, this would absolutely take me all 4 to 6 hours that you could count as morning. Right, talking Noble Ewing out of into like letting me help him out of that hole, and so on and so forth. So
but yeah, that's a great, honestly, that was such a great example of, you know, rolling on the random prompts and tying it into the story that you have already created. Obviously, it's a little different when you're just starting out, because not really, things aren't really in place yet, but as you go, that's gonna be how it is. You are going to roll on these tables, you're gonna get these prompts, and you tie them into the story one way or another. And I love that for some reason there's this like weird person who's kind of got an eye on you, and it's like, all right, what's this gonna be about?
Yeah, it's weird, and I'm really vibing with it. So it's a lot of fun because too, like, I know that feeling like, oh well, I'm just playing it by myself. What surprises could there be? Right. And like it, I mean, illustrated just then, like, you know, I roll something and then I have to figure out like, okay, well, how can I connect all of these things together with what I know about this place and my character and the neighbors that I've met so far and what I've established about my little town, right? And then sometimes the solution that you come up with surprises you, right? Like, yeah, it's really cool. And I hope after listening to this, more people will play Over the Mountain, because it's so good. I want to hear about other people's experiences playing it.
I agree so much. I even want to start playing it after this. I get, like I said earlier, I have a character that I designed initially for a game, and I'm not quite sure if that game is still going to happen, but I love the character idea. It's like, oh, how can I twist it in a way to actually like make them fit in this game, and like give them their own little story, because that's the one thing I know a lot of people like to create characters, and there aren't
Yes.
always games for those characters. Solo games would be an amazing opportunity to start to explore things about these characters, even potentially making and creating parts of their backstory for them.
Yeah. Yeah,
Uh,
it's the best part, honestly.
it really
And I love
is.
reverse engineering them through play. Like something happens and I'm like, okay, how is this relevant? Like what is happening here?
And the great thing as well is that it's a very cozy game. Journal, just
Mhm.
rolling prompts. There's a lot of ones that are like, it reminds me of like Animal Crossing, like someone lost something and you're going around like asking each of the villagers, like, oh, I found this item. And they're like, oh, it's someone else's. Obviously, it doesn't play out exactly like that, but it's got like cute little prompts where, someone lost something and you want to return it to them. And so you like see the journey. Well, you don't see, you write down the journey of how that happened that
Yeah.
day. It's
Yeah, you
so
discover
cool.
it by rolling. Yeah, and you can like um for every 3 positive interactions that you have with one of your neighbors, you can do a side quest for them. So,
Oh,
the next time you see them, it says you roll a d20 for an item that they ask you to bring them, and then you kind of play through the game and you find that item whenever it feels right. Right?
oh,
So
that's so
like
cool.
yeah, I think it's really neat, and then you have to wait until you see that neighbor again to give them whatever it was you found for them. So, like, it might take a while, theoretically, depending on the luck of the dice, but, then you get 3 more positive interactions, so you can choose to do things for your neighbors you like.
Mhm.
So, obviously, Legend has a huge crush on Socorro Blankenship, so as soon as that 3rd positive interaction happens, Legend is gonna be like, "Is there anything I can do for you?" Um, and then, like, once you have 10 positive interactions with a neighbor, you can try to tell them your secret, and
Ooh.
that you do that as an encounter. So you roll your d6, and then if it goes well, they might become your friend.
And it will just
And
completely
then
change the relationship as well, because, if you roll
yeah,
something negative, if you roll a bad encounter, then what bad thing happens? Are you, because I love also different ways of interpreting failure. Is there a reason maybe that you aren't able to tell them if it's not like a super,
yes,
super bad encounter? Or did you tell them and they reacted in a way that was negative and bad that surprised you?
right. Or maybe if you roll a 3, it doesn't necessarily harm your relationship, but they just don't believe you.
Yeah, that as well, because like, even though the town, at least your town, is like kind of spooky and weird, people still might not believe you. That's not the norm. That's not something that's really, you know, normal. That's not something that's talked
Mhm.
about. So just not believing you may harm your relationship just a little bit and would count as a like quote unquote bad encounter, because they might think you're lying, or they just think you're telling a story to accomplish some sort of goal. It's crazy.
Right. Or think you're joking with
Yeah.
them, which I think would be hurtful, right? Like if Legend becomes close with somebody like currently, I have 2 positive interactions with Socorro Blankenship and with Foster Buck. And so those 2 are like the furthest I'm getting in terms of relationship progress. And once I become friends with like Foster Buck, if I try to tell him my secret and for whatever reason, the circumstances or whatever, I decide like he kind of waves it off as like an oh haha yeah okay whatever. Um it's very funny, like that might seriously hurt Legend's feelings.
Yeah, and it's heartbreaking. Like, oh,
Yeah.
there's so many things that you can explore and so many opportunities that will arise within this game because of how it's been set up and just your own creativity. It's amazing. And I don't know if there's any like last few mechanics or any last few words you want to say about the game before we end the episode, but I think that's pretty much the majority of it. It's your own creativity with this very simple structure, and you will just go from there and create amazing stories.
Yeah, absolutely. I highly encourage anybody who's interested to check it out. I think Mars Corbeau made this for a game jam, if I recall correctly, and it is available for free. You can choose to tip them um, for their game design effort, and it's so much fun, honestly. And it's the exact correct amount, in my opinion, of like developed gameplay mechanics and prompts versus freedom of choice. And if you, like me, have a hard time deciding on things, you can always come up with a way to roll to determine it, or randomly generate it or something like that, right? I try to bridge my own creativity with my desire to have a stress-free play experience with this, right? So like if I hit a spot where I'm like, I don't know what to do, I will just leave as much of it up to the dice as possible, and then just let my creativity shine in how I choose to put those roles together.
Yep.
And it is absolutely flexible in that regard. And you can do the opposite too, right? You could decide not to roll, and you could just say like, I know that I want this, I want to go to the gas station,
Mm-hmm.
and have whatever happen there.
Yeah, over time it might just become you are creating your own story without doing any of the rolling at all, because that's just how far you've gotten into the game. You have a good idea of how things would happen. You've developed the neighbors, you've developed your characters, you developed the location enough that you feel confident just going in and, creating your own story.
Exactly.
So cool. I love it so much. I definitely need to start playing some solo games, because the more and more I'm looking into them, the more and more opportunities that I see for just absolutely amazing experiences.
I need to hear everything about when you start playing Over the Mountain. I need to know all about your character and what you name your town so I can talk shit about it.
No! As long as I can talk shit about your town, then it's a deal.
Oh, 100%. It's fucking weird. Like, please do.
I think that's a great time to end the episode. Thank you so much for listening. And thank you again, Emily, for coming on. It's been a joy every time you've come on, and this time is no different. So thank you so much.
Thank you for having me. It's always so fun to be here and just get progressively a little bit stranger every time.
Absolutely. As well as I just appreciate you just sharing the stories from your game and, the creation of it, because that's something that I always find extremely fascinating. So thank you so much. Thank you so much for listening to this episode of the RPG Goblin. This was such a blast, and like I said at the beginning, I've actually started my own personal game of Over the Mountain, and it has been such a blast so far to start my character's story and set up all the prompts for it. Again, thank you to Emily for joining me yet again on this podcast. It has been such a blast. Emily's social media is in the description below, along with the RPG Goblin social media as well. Now, next episode is going to be coming out on March 24th on Friday, and it's going to be all about the game Fate Accelerated with another podcast, actually, called Nat 1 Nerds. Now, I'm super, super excited about this, and I really hope that you're excited as well, since Fate is a very, very interesting system, and I learned a lot from talking about Fate Accelerated. So, see you next time.